Most men talk when they feel uncomfortable. They talk when they feel nervous. They talk when they feel the need to prove themselves. They fill silence with explanations, jokes, stories, and unnecessary details because they believe that constant engagement creates attraction. But what it actually reveals is emotional restlessness, and restlessness weakens presence. Silence, when used correctly, is not emptiness. It is control. When you are emotionally controlled, you do not rush to respond to every statement. You do not interrupt to insert your opinion. You do not over-explain your intentions. You listen fully. You process. And when you speak, your words carry weight because they are measured, not impulsive. Most men react. A Stoic man responds. There is a powerful difference between the two. Reaction is driven by emotion. Response is guided by discipline. When she challenges you playfully, you don't scramble to defend yourself. When she goes quiet, you don't panic and start filling the gap. When there is a pause in conversation, you don't treat it like a problem that needs solving. You remain steady. That steadiness communicates emotional strength. Women are highly perceptive to emotional shifts. If your tone changes quickly, if your energy spikes or drops depending on her reactions, she feels it. Instability creates subtle tension, but when you remain calm regardless of the situation, she begins to feel safe around you. Emotional control creates psychological comfort, and comfort builds attraction over time. Silence shows that you are not seeking approval. You are not performing. You are not trying to impress her with constant validation-seeking behavior. You are comfortable in your own skin. Think about this carefully. The man who talks endlessly is often trying to prove value. The man who can sit back, observe, and speak intentionally already believes in his value. That belief changes the dynamic completely. Silence also prevents emotional leakage. When you talk too much, you often reveal insecurity without realizing it. You overclarify your intentions. You explain why you didn't reply fast enough. You justify small decisions that never needed justification. Each extra explanation chips away at your perceived confidence. A Stoic mindset removes the urge to justify unnecessarily. You do not explain yourself unless explanation is required. You do not defend yourself unless boundaries are crossed. You do not argue over trivial matters to protect ego. You remain composed. Composure is magnetic because it is rare. In modern dating, emotional impulsiveness is common. Quick reactions, emotional texting, oversharing, oversensitivity. When you operate differently, when you pause before responding, when you maintain calm body language, when you speak slowly and clearly, you stand out immediately. Silence also enhances listening, and true listening makes people feel valued. Instead of waiting for your turn to speak, you focus on understanding. When she speaks, you absorb her words. You ask thoughtful questions. You respond with intention. That depth of attention creates connection far more effectively than constant talking ever could. There is power in delayed response, not as a tactic, but as discipline. When you take a moment before answering, you demonstrate thoughtfulness. You show that your words are chosen, not thrown. Silence strengthens eye contact. It strengthens posture. It strengthens awareness. Without noise, your presence becomes more noticeable. Your calmness becomes grounding. In moments where others might become awkward or anxious, you remain steady. Emotional control through silence also protects you from saying things you will regret. Impulsive words can create unnecessary conflict. Measured silence prevents escalation. It keeps interactions smooth and respectful. Most importantly, silence reflects inner stability. You are not rushing. You are not chasing. You are not trying to fill space to avoid discomfort. You are comfortable with yourself. And when you are comfortable with yourself, others feel comfortable around you. The man who masters silence masters his emotions, and the man who masters his emotions becomes impossible to ignore. Expend key point 2 in 700 words, according to prompt without any heading and flow speech naturally according to overall key points, and add only necessary ending line, without hatting. Most men reveal too much too quickly. They believe transparency builds attraction instantly, so they share their entire life story within days, their struggles, their dreams, their fears, their past relationships. They think depth is created by volume, but attraction is not built through immediate exposure. It is built through gradual discovery. Silence creates mystery because it slows revelation. When you do not explain everything about yourself immediately, you allow curiosity to grow naturally. Curiosity is one of the strongest psychological drivers of attraction. When someone feels there is more to uncover, they lean in, they observe more closely, they invest attention. But when everything is laid out at once, there is nothing left to discover. A Stoic mindset understands restraint, not secrecy, not deception. Restraint. You share who you are, but you do it in layers. You allow connection to unfold instead of forcing it forward. Mystery begins in conversation. You do not dominate discussions with long monologues about your accomplishments. You do not rush to impress. If she asks about your goals, you answer confidently but concisely. You give enough to show direction, but not so much that it feels like you are trying to sell yourself. The more you try to convince someone of your value, the less convincing it becomes. Silence allows your actions to speak louder than your explanations. Instead of telling her how disciplined you are, she observes your consistency. Instead of declaring your strength, she feels your calm presence. Instead of broadcasting every thought, you allow moments to breathe. When there is a pause in conversation, many men rush to fill it. They fear awkwardness. But silence in those moments can create emotional tension, not negative tension, but charged awareness. Eye contact becomes stronger, presence becomes sharper, energy becomes more noticeable. Mystery also protects your emotional depth. Oversharing early often leads to imbalance. When you reveal your deepest vulnerabilities before trust is built, you create intensity without foundation. That intensity can feel overwhelming rather than attractive. A Stoic man understands timing. He does not suppress emotion, but he does not expose it prematurely either. He allows trust to earn vulnerability. Silence also prevents predictability. When you react immediately to everything, when you constantly narrate your thoughts, when you explain your every move, you become easy to read. There is no intrigue. But when you respond thoughtfully instead of instantly, when you keep certain parts of your world private, you create subtle unpredictability. Unpredictability, when grounded in stability, is magnetic. It makes her wonder what you are thinking. It makes her replay conversations. It makes her curious about your perspective. That curiosity deepens engagement. Another powerful element of mystery is independence. When you are not constantly available, not constantly updating, not constantly seeking attention, it signals that your life is full. A full life is attractive. Silence reinforces that you have focus beyond the interaction. You do not need to broadcast your schedule. You do not need to explain why you were busy. You simply live your life. That quiet independence creates intrigue because it shows that you are grounded in your own direction. Mystery also strengthens emotional pacing. Instead of declaring strong feelings quickly, you allow emotions to grow naturally. You express interest, but you do not overwhelm. You show warmth, but you maintain composure. This balance keeps attraction steady rather than burning out quickly. When she feels that there is always another layer to discover, connection remains alive. Every interaction feels like progress rather than repetition. And imagination often intensifies attraction more than facts. When she does not know every detail, her mind fills in the gaps, often in your favor. This is not manipulation, it is discipline. It is understanding that depth is revealed, not displayed. The man who speaks less but says more creates impact. The man who reveals himself slowly builds. Attraction follows naturally. Expend key point 3 in 700 words according to prompt, without any heading and flow speech naturally according to overall key points, and add only necessary ending line without hatting. Confidence does not need noise. In fact, the strongest form of confidence is often quiet. Most men believe they must dominate conversations, prove their intelligence, win every debate, and constantly assert themselves to appear strong. But true confidence is not loud. It is steady. It is controlled. It is comfortable with silence. When you are secure within yourself, you do not feel pressure to fill every moment with words. You do not rush to correct every misunderstanding. You do not argue just to protect your ego. You listen, you observe, you speak when it matters. And that restraint communicates more strength than constant talking ever could. Silence demonstrates that you are not seeking validation. A man who constantly speaks often does so to be seen, to be approved of, to be acknowledged. But when you can sit calmly, maintain eye contact, and remain composed without performing, you signal that your self-worth is internal. You are not waiting for applause. You are not trying to impress. You already know your value. That internal certainty is magnetic. When she challenges you playfully or disagrees with your opinion, an insecure man reacts immediately. He defends aggressively. He over-explains. He tries to win. But a confident man smiles, pauses, and responds with calm clarity. He is not threatened by difference. He does not feel the need to overpower the moment. Silence in those situations shows emotional security. It shows that your identity is not fragile. You are not shaken by small tests or playful tension. You remain grounded. There is also power in slow responses. It shows that you are not impulsive. Your words are chosen, not thrown. That deliberateness signals maturity, and maturity builds attraction far more effectively than flashy conversation. Many men talk fast when they feel nervous. They ramble. They interrupt themselves. They try to keep energy high because they fear losing attention. But confidence does not chase attention. Confidence attracts attention by being stable. When you speak calmly, when your tone is measured, when your body language is relaxed, people lean in naturally. They want to hear what you will say, nay, XT, because it feels intentional. Silence also strengthens nonverbal communication. When you are not constantly speaking, your posture, your eye contact, your facial expressions become more noticeable. Strong eye contact combined with quiet composure creates intensity. It creates presence. Presence is powerful because it cannot be faked easily. It comes from inner stability. A Stoic mindset reinforces this stability. You understand that you cannot control others' opinions. You cannot control how you are perceived entirely. But you can control your reactions. You can control your tone. You can control whether you respond with composure or emotion. That control creates quiet dominance. Not dominance through aggression, but dominance through centered energy. The person who is least reactive often controls the emotional frame. Confidence also means you are not afraid of pauses. If a conversation slows down, you do not panic. You allow it. You trust that connection does not depend on constant stimulation. That trust removes pressure from the interaction. When there is no pressure, authenticity increases. Silence can also prevent unnecessary mistakes. Many people reveal insecurity simply by speaking too much. They exaggerate stories. They brag subtly. They contradict themselves. The more you speak impulsively, the more opportunities you create to undermine your own image. Silence protects you from that. A confident man does not need to advertise his strengths. His actions reveal them over time. His discipline speaks. His consistency speaks. His calmness speaks. And when he does speak, people listen because his words are rare and deliberate. Confidence is not proven through volume. It is proven through composure. The ability to remain calm, steady, and intentional in your speech shows that you are not moved easily by external pressure. And the man who is not moved becomes mentally magnetic without ever raising his voice. Expend key point 4 and 700 words according to prompt without any heading, and flow speech naturally according to overall key points, and add only necessary ending line without hatting. Most men don't realize that attraction is not just about what you say, but about who controls the emotional pace of the interaction. When you talk too much, respond too quickly, and react to every shift in energy, you hand over control of the dynamic. You become reactive instead of centered. Silence changes that completely. When you pause before responding, you slow down the tempo. You interrupt impulsiveness. Instead of matching her emotional spikes, excitement, teasing, mood shifts, you remain steady. That steadiness subtly shifts the frame. You are no longer chasing the flow of conversation. You are guiding it through composure. The person who reacts least often holds the strongest emotional position. This doesn't mean being cold. It means being deliberate. When she says something playful, you don't rush to outdo her joke. You smile, hold eye contact, and let the moment sit for a second before responding. That pause creates tension, the good kind. It creates anticipation. It makes the interaction feel layered rather than rushed. Most men fear that silence will make them seem boring. In reality, controlled silence makes you unpredictable, not unstable, unpredictable in a grounded way. She cannot fully anticipate how you will respond because you are not reacting instantly. That slight unpredictability creates intrigue. Instant reactions often come from emotional impulse. If she takes longer to reply to a message, many men immediately send another. If she seems slightly distant, they compensate with extra attention. That reactive behavior shifts the balance. It signals that your emotional state depends on her act. Ions. But when you maintain silence in moments where others would panic, you communicate self-sufficiency. If she takes longer to respond, you continue your day. If she tests you lightly, you don't overcorrect. If she expresses a different opinion, you listen calmly instead of debating intensely. Silence in those moments creates emotional gravity. Gravity pulls. It doesn't chase. When you don't feel the need to fill every space, she begins to invest more. She may ask follow-up questions. She may initiate topics. She may lean in physically during pauses. The dynamic shifts from you trying to hold attention to her participating more actively. Attraction deepens when she invests. There's also power in not over-explaining yourself. When you justify every action, every delay, every decision, you lower your frame. Silence communicates that you are comfortable with your choices. If you were busy, you simply say you were busy. You don't provide a detailed breakdown to defend yourself. This restraint creates respect. In group settings, this becomes even more visible. The loudest person often commands attention temporarily, but the quiet, composed individual commands curiosity. When you speak less but with clarity, people naturally pause to listen. Your words stand out because they are not constant. Emotionally, silence also allows you to observe more. You notice tone shifts, you notice body language, you notice inconsistencies. Instead of being consumed by performing, you gather information. This awareness allows you to respond strategically rather than emotionally. Silence slows the entire interaction down to your pace. And pace matters. When interactions move too fast emotionally, they burn out quickly. When they move steadily, tension builds gradually. Gradual tension is sustainable. It keeps attraction alive instead of exhausting it. A Stoic mindset reinforces this because it trains you to pause between stimulus and response. Something happens, you breathe, you think, you choose your reaction. That space between event and response is where power lives. Most people operate without that space. They react instantly, they speak impulsively, they escalate unnecessarily. When you operate differently, you stand out without trying. Silence also prevents you from overcommitting too early. When you are not constantly filling conversations with future plans and exaggerated enthusiasm, you allow the connection to unfold naturally. You give space for emotional reciprocity. The dynamic becomes balanced rather than forced, and balance creates stability. When she feels that your presence is calm, measured, and not easily shaken, she relaxes into the interaction. She doesn't feel pressured, she feels invited. Silence shifts the emotional dynamic from pursuit to pull, and the man who masters that shift no longer needs to chase attraction. He becomes the center it moves toward. Expend key point 5 in 700 words according to prompt, without any heading and flow speech, naturally according to overall key points, and add only necessary ending line, without hatting. Most men lose their power, not because they lack strength, but because they talk it away. They reveal too much, promise too quickly, complain too openly, and react too emotionally. Words, when undisciplined, drain authority. Silence, when controlled, preserves it. Power is not about domination. It is about self-command, and self-command begins with restraint. When you speak impulsively, you often expose insecurity without realizing it. You over-explain why you were late. You overpraise too early. You overshare personal struggles before trust is earned. Each extra word may feel harmless, but collectively they signal emotional urgency. Urgency weakens leverage. A Stoic mindset, teaches you to filter. Not everything you think needs to be said. Not every emotion deserves expression. Not every situation requires commentary. Silence becomes a shield that protects your composure and your boundaries. Think about how often men talk themselves into weaker positions. They negotiate their own standards out of fear of losing someone. They soften boundaries with excessive explanation. They apologize for things that require no apology. All of this usually happens through unnecessary words. When you are silent instead of reactive, you give yourself time to evaluate. Is this worth responding to? Does this deserve energy? Is this aligned with my standards? That pause protects your power. Silence also prevents overpromising. Early in attraction, excitement can lead to exaggerated statements. You promise trips. You promise commitment. You promise emotional depth that has not yet been built. When words move faster than reality, credibility decreases. A disciplined man lets actions lead and words follow. Another way silence protects power is by limiting emotional leakage. When you complain excessively about work, about other people, about past relationships, you subtly present yourself as reactive to circumstances. Even if your frustrations are valid, constant expression of them creates an image of instability. A composed man shares selectively. He does not suppress feelings, but he does not unload them recklessly either. He chooses the right time, the right context, and the right depth. This selective expression builds intrigue and respect. If she cancels plans, you do not immediately express disappointment with emotional intensity. You respond calmly. You maintain your schedule. If she is inconsistent, you do not plead for clarity repeatedly. You observe and adjust accordingly. The les. As you chase resolution through words, the more your actions communicate standards. Power is maintained through alignment between speech and behavior. When you speak rarely but consistently follow through, your words gain weight. When you speak constantly but act inconsistently, your words lose impact. Silence strengthens consistency. It also forces others to reveal more about themselves. When you are not constantly filling space, people often speak more, they disclose more, they show their patterns. This gives you insight without forcing you to expose yourself prematurely. A Stoic understands that information is valuable. Silence allows you to gather it. There is also psychological strength in not reacting to every provocation. Sometimes people test boundaries unconsciously. If you respond to every small comment defensively, you show sensitivity. If you remain calm and unbothered, you show resilience. Unbothered energy is powerful because it signals inner security. Silence also keeps your intentions controlled. When you talk excessively about future plans, you create expectations. When you talk excessively about feelings, you accelerate emotional pressure. When you talk excessively about your value, you appear to be selling yourself. But when you move quietly, confidently, and consistently, you allow others to draw conclusions on their own. Conclusions formed independently are stronger than claims declared openly. This is not about being distant, it is about being disciplined. You still express warmth, you still communicate clearly, but you eliminate unnecessary emotional noise. Every word you remove increases the impact of the ones that remain. The man who speaks less but stands firm carries authority without effort. An authority that does not need to announce itself is the most powerful kind. Expend key point 6 in 700 words. According to prompt without any heading and flow speech naturally according to overall key points and add only necessary ending line without hatting. When you remove excess words, something else becomes stronger, your presence. Most people rely on conversation to create connection, but very few understand how powerful silent presence can be. When you are not distracted by filling every gap with noise, your awareness sharpens. Your posture becomes more noticeable, your eye contact becomes more intense. Your energy becomes grounded. Silence forces you into the moment. Many men hide behind constant talking. They use humor, storytelling, and endless commentary to avoid stillness. Stillness can feel uncomfortable because it exposes insecurity. But when you train yourself to sit in silence without anxiety, you develop a different kind of confidence. One that is felt before it is heard. Presence is not about dominating space. It is about owning your space internally. When you stand or sit with calm posture, when your breathing is steady, when your movements are deliberate instead of restless, people feel that stability. Women especially are sensitive to energy shifts. If your body language is tense and your speech rushed, it signals nervousness. But when your silence is relaxed and composed, it signals control. Silence amplifies eye contact. When there are fewer words, your gaze carries more meaning. Holding eye contact without immediately looking away communicates security. It shows that you are not intimidated by connection. You are comfortable being seen. And comfort in visibility is rare. When you reduce verbal noise, you also begin to notice more about her. Her tone changes, her micro-expressions, her subtle shifts in posture. Instead of thinking about what you will say next, you are observing what is happening now. That awareness allows you to respond with precision rather than assumption. Precision creates impact. Presence also strengthens your voice when you do speak. If you are constantly talking, your words blend into background noise. But when you speak after intentional silence, attention naturally shifts toward you. Your statements feel deliberate. Your humor feels sharper. Your compliments feel more sincere, because they are not excessive. Silence turns ordinary words into weighted words. There is also a grounded masculinity in stillness. When you are not fidgeting, not over-gesturing, not constantly checking your phone, you communicate focus. Focus signals priority. It tells her that in that moment you are fully there. Most modern interactions are filled with distraction, notifications, quick responses, surface-level engagement. When you offer undivided attention without unnecessary chatter, it feels rare. Rarity increases value. Silence also enhances emotional tension. In moments of connection, a pause can deepen intimacy far more than an extra sentence. A slight smile without commentary can create warmth. A steady gaze without interruption can create chemistry. Words sometimes dilute what silence intensifies. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. Warmth can exist within silence. A calm expression, a subtle nod, a relaxed smile. These nonverbal signals often communicate more authenticity than rehearsed lines ever could. A Stoic mindset reinforces this because it trains you to detach from the need to impress. When you are not trying to prove yourself, you relax. When you relax, your energy becomes smoother. When your energy becomes smoother, your presence becomes magnetic. Magnetism is not loud, it is steady. It pulls rather than pushes. When she feels that you are grounded in yourself, not performing, not seeking validation, not anxious for reaction, she relaxes too. Emotional comfort grows in that space. And comfort combined with subtle tension creates attraction. Presence also protects you from overthinking. When you are anchored in the moment, you are not replaying past statements or predicting future outcomes. You are simply there. That mental clarity shows in your demeanor. The man who can sit in silence without discomfort demonstrates mastery over himself. He does not need noise to feel significant. He does not need constant affirmation to feel valued. His calm becomes contagious, and when your silence carries calm, strength, and intention, your presence alone becomes enough to draw her closer.